So, speedrunning, a thing we like to see and watch, and maybe you do, right? So, I'll say this right now. If you like speedrunning, well, welcome to the Genius of series, where we're going to be talking about games, their mechanics, and why that game is a good speedrun. And in this episode, we're going to talk about the most infamous Fire Emblem game of them all, Fire Emblem Thracia 776. Cue the opening music. Before we get into the gameplay, I actually want to talk about the Super Famicom flash cartridge that was released by Nintendo Power. And what did it do? It actually did what it had to do, and that was make games cheaper to buy by overriding data on the cartridge. But it wasn't until the year 2000, Thracia 776 got a standard cartridge release, which damaged the sales, and it was pretty bad. Hence why it's the lowest selling Fire Emblem game in the franchise. However, it did get very good reviews at the time and was really well praised. Gameplay-wise, Thracia 776 retains the gameplay of the previous entries. However, when it comes to map design, it's much more manageable than the last game, FE4, because in Genealogy of the Holy War, you had much more grandeur maps when it came to narrative and gameplay. However, the drawback with these maps was that you had to siege so many castles, and players did not want to deal with them. So they went back to the Chapter 1 to Epilogue mindset, i.e. having smaller maps so people could play the game much more faster. Hence why, while there are maps that are small but tough, it's actually because of the fact that they wanted to reduce the map size and make sure players didn't take so long to siege or defend on a map. In terms of mechanics, Thracia 776 has several of these, and these are the build stat, the capture mechanic, the rescue system, the steal mechanic for thieves, and the fatigue system. The capture mechanic is a really unique system in Thracia 776 because it has to deal with the build stat or constitution stat if you're playing later Fire Emblem games. And in this mechanic, your goal is to steal from your enemy's inventory by having the max amount of constitution or build that you have by not killing them, but kidnapping them and making sure you steal their items. A good example of using the capture mechanic is in Chapter 2X when you want to get Lethus. So what you would have to do in that scenario is kidnap him without killing him. Because if you would kill him, you would essentially have to start the map all over again if you want to recruit him. The other reason you want to capture your units from the enemy line is because you want to make sure you get their inventory and trade them at the vendor so you can get more money. And a lot of capturing doesn't have to be just generic enemies. It can also be done to bosses as well, because if you can do it to bosses, you can also get their personal weapons and also use them against them to buy more weapons. In terms of the rescue mechanic in Thracia 776, I think it's done pretty well in its game that's been invented for. And I'm not going to dwell on it too long, but it's really good for getting out of danger in terms of enemy lines. Another great way to use the rescue system is to rescue green units, and I think that's also pretty well done. Another great mechanic Thracia 776 introduced is the weapons proficiency mechanic, where you can level up your weapons proficiency, and if you got to A rank, you can wield so many broken weapons. Now we come to the epilogue of our journey in this video, and I will tell you why you should speed run this game, and it's actually pretty simple. The game itself is pretty well done, the mechanics are very well put together, and the speed run itself is pretty fun because of how many units you can get and the amount of energetic shit you can do, like essentially, as I said in my mechanics section, taking prisoners and kicking them down by taking their weapons. And I think it's a great thing because Thracia is like a game that is basically the, well, it's like the Majora's Mask of Fire Emblem. And in a way, it's pretty, really great with its like story. Not to mention the speedrun categories for this game are pretty good. Like you have like the popular 80% and the goddamn 42 units category, which by the way is pretty well done. It's pretty great. Now, I will ask you, viewers, do you want to speedrun this game? If so, then I do recommend you do 80% first and then study 42 units. Or you could do something crazy like me, where it's like I essentially just do a randomized speedrun of the game. Like, bro, this is how good the game is, and it doesn't get better than this, you know. Aside from that, I bid you all a farewell and a happy month of Fire Emblem.